Africa, Singapore, and India. He is also a seasoned Toastmaster and international keynote speaker who has delivered both online and offline seminars and workshops globally in the past 5 to 6 years. He has been associated with various corporate companies and institutions for his workshop. Not just that, he has mentored more than 50 individuals in the field of public speaking. So, with a huge round of applause, I Abhijit to present himself on conflict management. Here you go, Abhijit.
Thank you, Yuvraj, for that introduction and warm welcome. We have quite a number of members of Interra, and first of all, let me thank the entire management of Interra for having me as part of your one of your sessions that I could host. And with the kind of introduction that Yuvraj just presented, I'll just give you a little more about who I am and how did I manage to come across to this place today to share a session on conflict management. Well, it started off way when I just graduated out of college and joined the corporate in 2008. And that's when the journey started into corporate management. I joined as a graduate engineering trainee, and never did I realize the fact that where the journey started and where would I land up would be a huge transition from where I was and where I am today. Having said that, why this subject, conflict management, is because it's just not about me as an individual, but it's all about everyone sitting in this room, as well as offline on Zoom platform, who would be able to understand why this subject matter is so very important in our day-to-day lives. We intentionally and unintentionally do not realize the fact that conflicts become a practice. It's a part of our day-to-day lives. We get so much adapted to it. But most importantly, we have to realize that these things are important for our growth. It sounds funny, right? When I say that conflicts are important for our growth. Let me tell you something. Before I even start this section, I really want to highlight one of the essence of why conflict management. Conflict does happen when we have relationships, be it a parent and a child, be it a husband and a wife, your spouse, your friends, your colleagues, your manager and your peers, subordinates. There are always differences of opinion. No two persons are of the similar nature of the same behavior. There are differences of ideas, there are differences of opinions, there are differences of behavior. And when there is a difference, there will be conflict which will arise. Most importantly, that we should realize this, how do you evade that? How do you really make sure that you do not get into some kind of arguments or discussions which will spoil your image, which will spoil your reputation, which will also spoil your brand value. So this conflict management is just not about an individual, it's an organization as a whole. A lot of times, the two organizations get into a tug of war, different kind of conflict. There are a lot of times where a group of people get into conflicts. There are a lot of times individuals get into conflict. So different stages of your versions of conflict management. I'll keep this entire workshop or the seminar that is being called for the next 1 hour a kind of interactive. I don't want myself to only train or guide or probably share my opinion, my views, but I want to get involved with a lot of people out here and in the online mode. I'm not sure how many people are there on the online mode, but at the same time, I want to make sure that everybody gets to understand towards the end of the session of what you are here for. Everybody knows what conflict management is. Everybody knows what conflict resolution is. But why exactly you would feel that you want to spend about 1 hour, the next 1 hour or so, hearing me out? I'm no rocket science. I'm not a kind of huge trainer or a motivator who's going to be just talking about conflict management. I'm not a subject matter expert of conflict management. Let me tell you that. But most importantly, what is important is we all should understand is how does this impact our day-to-day behavior, day-to-day aspects of our lives that we get involved in, right? So first of all, let's all understand, and before I even go to the next slide, at the first slide, help me understand what exactly is a conflict. Anybody from the audience? Yes, sir.
Difference in opinion.
Absolutely. Anybody else? Difference of opinion is one such version of conflict. Anyone else? Please do come. Difference of ideas, yes. Any more responses?
Difference of thoughts.
Well, conflicts. What exactly conflict is? It is very first thing. This is a very common phenomenon that I've kind of made sure that everybody gets adapted to what I'm exactly talking about. A normal, inescapable part of life. Do you believe it? We cannot escape from conflicts. We are human beings. We will have difference of ideas, we will have difference of opinions. And that is the reason why it's a normal, inescapable form of life. We cannot run out of it. We cannot escape. We cannot avoid it. A periodic occurrence in any form of relationships. Just a couple of minutes ago, I did mention that you will have relationships with your partners, you will have relationships with your bosses, your management, with your colleagues, and anyone and everyone. Most importantly, these are certain occurrences which happens periodically. It is bound to happen. Even the bestest of friends, even a relationship between a parent and a child, even a relationship between a husband and a wife will have differences of opinions. No two thoughts goes hand in hand. An opportunity to understand opposing preferences and values. What do we mean by this? I'll give an example. Ujjwal is standing right there, and I'm here. Right? There is a particular aspect of a definition of certain things which Ujjwal will probably able to understand in a different way. What he thinks out of that subject matter may not be the same of what I think. We are best of friends, we are best of colleagues, and we are very well known to each other. But having said that, there is still an opportunity for Ujjwal to define that particular aspect in a different way. And I have a different version of it. So when that happens, it's a kind of conflict of interest, which I'm not aware of, which even Ujjwal is not aware of. What is that I think? At the same time, it gives an opportunity to Ujjwal. It also gives an opportunity to me to know each other's opinion about that particular aspect. Right? You getting it? Disagreement about ideas and approaches. Conflicts are versions where there would be disagreements, where there will be non-compliances, where there will be interest which will not favor the way in which you want to be, where you want to have. That is the reason why there would be disagreements. Conflict occurs when there are two or more parties. You cannot have a conflict when you handle things standalone. You will have conflicts when there are two parties, minimum two parties involved in it. Conflict occurs when there are two more parties perceiving that they have mutually incompatible values, priorities, or goals. Right? Let us understand the essence of conflict out here, what I've defined. It occurs when there are more parties. We are all part of the corporate setup. You have your colleagues sitting right next to each other. But then, on a day-to-day basis, you talk, you converse, you have discussions around assignments that you have been given. But then, on the same assignment, which you also have to do the same, your colleague next, sitting right next to you, also would have to do the same, will have different ways of doing it. You have a different approach. Your colleague may have a different approach. When two people have different approaches towards achieving a common goal, do you not think that it also isn't a conflict? In a positive way. So let me also say this, that conflicts are never termed as only negative. There are positive conflicts as well, which actually help individuals to get better. When two people have different opinion, different viewpoints towards even achievement of a single goal, is also a version of conflict. Now let us also understand the types of conflict. So I have a biographical representation, and it's put into 4 different slides of how I have defined as compatible goals and compatible behavior. So if you look at this is compatible behavior, this is incompatible behavior, compatible goals and incompatible goals. Now there are 4 forms or types of conflicts which I have primarily defined as no conflict, latent conflict, surface conflict, and open conflict. Right. So we'll just talk about the first version of conflict, which is no conflict. And when would that happen? Any guesses? When do you think that no conflict would happen in such a kind of a representation?
Either someone is working individually or someone is, if there is no disagreement.
Fair enough. So if I talk about compatible behavior, incompatible behavior, compatible goals, and incompatible goals, when is that there is no conflict? Easy representation. If you see no conflict, it falls under the version of compatible behavior and compatible goals. As in a team, there are 2 people, they know what their task is, their thoughts are same, their ideas behind achieving success in that particular assignment is the same, and they're working together hand in hand. When 2 people are working together hand in hand to achieve a common goal with a common behavior, which is compatible behavior, there is no any signs of conflict that may arise. When goals and behaviors are compatible, there's no conflict. Now moving on to the second part, which is latent conflict. If you see the graph, incompatible goals but compatible behavior. Latent conflict is when behavior is apparently compatible but goals are not. Behaviors could be same, but nobody is going to achieve a common goal. It's a point of discussion, because if thoughts are same but you are not working towards achieving a common goal, it will rise up. The conflict is bound to rise up, and there could be even more serious issues coming up in the future. In that case, whenever these kind of situations come at point of latent conflict, the discussions have to be put in front of the table. It is a point of discussion where these 2 people who have these kind of conflicts come together under a common umbrella with the support of others to help them out achieve common goals. Again, I will repeat, behavior is the same, goals are not. If 2 people have similar thoughts but are not progressing towards achieving a common goal, then it's a latent conflict. And in such cases, discussions has to be done. If that doesn't happen, then the conflict escalation is bound to happen. In this case, it can get aggravated, it can get escalated to even more higher issues, and that is the reason why this kind of thing happens. You need to have a ground discussion within a team. The third part is surface conflict. So when we talk about surface conflict, it again falls into incompatible behavior, but compatible goals. Very simple. People are working towards common goals, but at the same time, they do not have similar thoughts. What is that small thing that needs to be done, which can make 2 people work together? Communication. If a proper communication goes on to both the people that, hey, listen, you know what your goal is, you also know what your goal is, but you are not having a good conversation amongst each other. That is the gap which has to be bridged. That is the point when 2 people have to be brought under one particular shed to have a mutually discussed situation in which conflicts can work out. That is the reason why it's called as surface conflicts. And the final one is open conflict. Open conflict is when both are, you have incompatible goals and you have incompatible behavior. The percentage of having open conflicts as compared to the others is fairly less. But having said that, when these come up, these kind of open conflicts come up, this can lead to serious issues, especially when it comes to organizations. If you work out of your organization at your personal level, if you're working out things with your friends whom you hang around with, if you're going around with your family, open conflicts gets resolved because there's a level of mutual trust, there's a level of understanding, there's a family bonding which is attached. But in such a case, when it relates to corporate setups, open conflicts can really be very dangerous and very vital. In that case, all you need to do is you need to bring on the two people or a group, just not to make sure that they know, because there is that in open conflicts, the biggest issue is the lack of knowledge. The biggest issue is the communication. The biggest issue here in open conflicts is understanding of what to achieve. Lack of knowledge, lack of communication, and proper understanding. For this, two people working together really cannot work out. You need another external force to act upon it and make sure that kind of open conflicts are being resolved. Why does conflicts happen? 4 key points which we all addressed it very well. Miscommunication, different perceptions, different values, and difference in preferred outcomes. Okay. Before I even elaborate on this, I have a task and I want people to get involved into it. I'm not sure whether people in the online mode will be able to participate, but people out here, I want you all to participate. I want 8 volunteers. You can just come over. I have a small task to do, through the way of which you will be able to understand better of why conflicts happen and how it can be resolved. So any 8 volunteers, I mean, there's a very low audience is sitting here, but 8 volunteers, you can all come over. Whoever wants to volunteer, please. Don't worry, you can come over. I need 4 from here, 4 from here. It's just going to be a 5-minute task. Very simple, just to explain of what exactly this is all about. 4 from here as well. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 from here. So what it is, anybody from that side, that part, please come over. Utpal, you can also join in. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. One more. I need 1 more member.
Parul, come volunteer. Volunteer.
Okay, since a couple of members have just joined in, so there's an assignment which I'm just doing. Okay, that's with respect to conflict management. We have 8 members, 1, 4, 5, 7, 8. Okay. So what I will do is, I would request everyone to form a small circle, joining your fist hands together closely. Form a circle. A small circle.
You see it's circle.
Okay. Now, this is a team working for a specific project. Okay, this is a very powerful team. A team leader has assigned. Okay, Ujjwal is a team leader. Okay. Now, what is the case that you have assignments to carry out? You are very much focused, very determined, and you know you are very positive amongst your team members. Now, what happens is how I will break the chain here through the way of conflict and try to understand everybody out here. Try to understand the essence. I'll break the entire 8-member group to 2. Okay. Simple. Ujjwal, you and my what's your name? Nisha, you are one team. You are please. Need to and Bharti, you are one team again. Parul and Mamta, you are again one team and this two. Okay. Now I break this task into 4 different tasks. I tell you for this. If you achieve this, both of you get a much more powerful person. You get an increment. Nobody knows about it. I go and tell you both, and if you achieve this task, I do all these 3. I give you a promotion. You have different perks which they will not have. Which you can ask. And use one. Something very different as a team. Now, what I've exactly done is, as an individual, the first phase was that you're joining hands and you're working as a team. But what I've done is a sort of breaking this cycle here by giving some kind of different perks, increments, other bonuses. What you will actually think of. The very first thing is about yourself. What if I do this, if I win this task, okay, I get more than what. Exactly, that's going to be the relief, right? In a way, try to pull yourself as teams. Pull yourself, like these, you 2 are different teams, you want to separate from them. You 2 are going to get separated from the rest. You 2 are going to get separated from the rest. What you will end up doing is, when this kind of thought process, because it's a very closed environment, I'm not really making that activity to carry out. What you will think is, let's break free, let's work as a team. In that case, bridging together in one particular place, you start working in different directions. 2 of you would try to move behind with this crowd. 2 of you would think of moving here. The 2 of you out here would be thinking of moving behind in comparison to the others, and the same goes with them. Right? So what happens is, there's an element of conflict that I've already created among the team, which started off with a united team. Now, since I have created a different flow of giving some kind of extra perks and other different bonuses and appraisals, you start thinking about yourself. The kind of conflict starts arising in your own mindset. That what if I achieve this, I will be able to do better, I will be able to get this, which others preferably will not. Then you start working differently rather than how you started off. Right? Don't you think that this is a very common phenomenon happening in our corporate lives, in your department? It does, right? You work, but at the same time, whenever somebody comes on, you think this, working overtime, right? At the same time, there's somebody who is going and reporting to their managers table since from morning to the evening. Hey, look at that guy. Look at that person. He's always inside the cabin, trying to impress around the appraisal cycle. Conflict. Conflict of mindset, conflict of the thought and the behavior that you need. So here is what's some kind of, and obviously due to lack of space, I'm not creating that kind of families, but what I was thinking of is to make sure that you pull each other and make sure that you get separated from the group that you have. Anyway, thank you so much for being here. What I actually wanted to explain through the way of this small demonstration rather than assignment, a demonstration was to make sure that people do understand that these are very common things which we as employees do not get to understand when we are on a day-to-day role of assignment that we are carrying out. We come to our workstations, we come to our workplaces, we work for 8 hours, we leave for home, and then we move back. Right? The next day, the same kind of thing that we carry out. But here is the catch. If on a day-to-day basis, if you continue doing this, coming home, coming from home to office, working for 8 hours a day, and then going back, you will not be able to realize this fact that on a day-to-day spree, you actually having such kind of internal conflicts, which starts off from being very small, gets nurtured, And then at some point in time, some phase of your assignment that you carry or some phase of your career, it starts becoming a giant. And that is when it becomes unstoppable. It's not about an individual, it happens with each one of us. You be a developer, you be into marketing, you be into PR, even the top management a lot of times get into conflicts. You submit a proposal to a client, the CEO of the company or the managing director of the company may think that I need this project by hook or by crook. But the chief financial officer will have a different opinion. Yes, the project has to be taken, but not at a loss. It has to be taken at a premium. But the CEO who has to execute the project, ensure that the project has to become successful, he will have a different opinion. We do not have projects, people are on bench. Come what may, we may not be taking this project on a profitable basis, but we just want to take it. There is a conflict between the top management as well at the same time. Team members working under a project. Your project manager commands, hey, listen, time is running out. We have to execute this project in a defined schedule, within a definite period. The team members were not supportive because some of them may feel that, yes, okay, 4 or 5 months from now, we'll have to get this work completed, but not on the grounds of working on even on weekends. But you don't know that that particular project manager, why is he commanding that? If there are conflicts which happen in our day-to-day lives in the corporate setup, but knowingly, unknowingly, we do not get to feel it, we do not get to accept it, but at the same time, differences starts happening. The very first thing, why does it happen is because of miscommunication. And I'll talk more about miscommunication. Two parties do not understand well of what are they conveying. What do we mean by miscommunication on here? Something is communicated by one party may not be perceived or accepted, adapted by the other party. That is miscommunication. It is misinterpreted. I go on to my managing director this morning and I tell him, hey, Mr. Managing Director, tomorrow I have an assignment to carry out. I'll have to probably go to Interra IT Information Technologies and do a seminar. He takes it in a different way. Are you leaving your day-to-day job and going to a different organization to conduct a seminar? He actually didn't listen to me in totality to understand what exactly I'm trying to convey him. Are there any value addition? Are there any advantage? Are there any value proposition in the statement that I have made? It is just about listening to that statement of that individual and making a conclusion, which is ideally misinterpretation. So the miscommunication happens here. He believes that probably I am going to take a leave, I'm going to take a holiday from work because I'm willing to do something different on that very day. But not on the grounds of really knowing of why exactly I'm asking for one day off. Why exactly I am looking for an opportunity to go out and do a seminar. This is just a practical example that I just cited out to make things clear for you all. In this room and in the online version as well, whoever have joined in, everyone faces such kind of situations. I expect someone to do something and the person doesn't do it, or person does it but in a different way, not as per the expectation of what I have said. That is miscommunication, misinterpretation by the other person, and that is when a level of conflict starts arising. That is because miscommunication happens. Perceptions. What are different perceptions? Different perceptions here means that you come out of a situation with different views, different viewpoint, different ways of considering the fact. What is right for me may not be right for the other person. either could be right or it could be no one, or the situation could be very different. What is right for me may not be right for you, Raj. What is right for me may not right for you people out here. Or we could be both right. But there's a clash of ideas because the simple reason is that both the individuals are not thinking exactly the same. When you give an evaluation on somebody's, probably somebody has delivered a prepared speech, somebody has delivered a seminar, somebody has given an idea in front of the management for some kind of brainstorming. Everybody appreciates the fact that that brainstorming idea or concept which the individual has shared is of worth, is of going to be earning profitability for the organization. But in a way where it is has to be accepted from all parties in similar lines, which is not happening here. It is the idea or the brainstorming concept which has been shared by that person will certainly add value to the organization, no doubt. People appreciate that the common goal is being achieved, that the company is going to earn profit out of that idea which is being shared. There are going to be some changes, but then all the audience members will have to be under the same thought that yes, whatever idea, whatever concept has been built or has been developed by that person is correct and is right. I'll just take a moment to introduce Yuvraj to welcome.
Welcome, sir. Hi. So you can continue. I think so.
Yeah, why?
Will be doing. Right.
Now we talk about the third portion, which is the difference of values. This normally arises when different individuals have different value systems. What it means here that if today an assignment is being given to me and I do it with honor, the other person sitting next to me may think that this probably is unethical. This is not exactly in the way where he wants to get it done and probably may not consider to get this done. That is the reason why a lot of times conflict does arises in this kind of situations and parameters. Your immediate manager says, hey, you have to get this assignment done, but you know what? There are different ways of doing it. You just talk to the client and make sure to find out what exactly is the amount in which he wants this project to be executed. We'll work accordingly. The two people, the manager and his peer, works joint handedly, hand in hand, and make sure that the project gets executed, the project before the project is getting awarded. But on the other side, if the person who thinks that directly talking to the client and getting to know the budget and the price in which the client wants it, may be considered as an unethical practice. Different values can create differences in human beings. And that is the reason why conflicts does arise. Difference in preferred outcomes. How many of you do believe this, that this is a very common trend that happens in our day-to-day work that we do? Difference in preferred outcomes. Two persons seeing things in a different way, which is two persons seeing different solutions to the same problem. There's a problem which is arise, there's an escalation, and it's a team that is working together to solve that escalation. Now what happens is an individual or a member of the team works in a different way to get that sorted out. On the other side, there's a different team member who thinks in a different way altogether. So there are two different people working in two different directions, but making sure that that particular problem gets to have a solution. Difference in preferred outcomes. Today, if there is a conflict which arises, there is an escalation in particular assignment that we are carrying out. And I have my colleague out here. He will have a different solution to this problem, but not necessarily that I will also have the similar solution. My way of addressing to that issue, my way of addressing to that problem will have a different approach, which Yuvraj may not have it. He may think differently to find out the solution to that particular problem. In a way, both could be right. But the thing is that the solution to that problem is different. So that is the difference between the outcomes that we come up with, the problems that we come up with. Am I right? The difference in preferred outcomes. Now, conflict is functional and dysfunctional at the same time. Functional conflicts are considered to be positive, and dysfunctional conflicts are considered to be negative. Until now, it has been a common belief for a lot of people here that conflicts does mean negative impact. Conflict does mean that it will create problems, it will create issues in our lives, in our work, or in the assignments that we carry out in our corporate lives. But it has positive outcomes as well. So I'll talk about the functional conflict that goes forward, works towards achieving the desired goal. And some of them have the behavioral aspect of how conflicts can also be considered as positive. It is constructive. When you work towards a common goal, so I'll give you an example out here, how functional conflicts does work. In a team, there is a project that is going on. That's a current execute project which is getting executed. There are two team members under one shed, under one organizational chart. There are two people working in a team. Now, both have been given a common task to achieve a certain target within a stipulated period of time. Give an example of 2 months of time, and there's a common target that both of them together have to achieve. Now, both of them sit together. One person have different ideas, the other person has something different. What they do is, rather than working independently on the ideas that they have towards achievement of that one single goal, they share their ideas. Person A shares his ideas to achieve the goal, that is X. Person B also shares his ideas to achieve the goal X. Now, in that case, if you look at a Venn diagram mode, there will be some behaviors which will be common to both. And that is when both the individuals pick up the common ideas, leaving apart the individual. Because the moment that individual ideas are being kept in front, there will be dysfunctional conflicts, which I will talk about it. In functional conflicts, two people having two different ideas to achieve a common goal have common behaviors, have common ideas coming under one mode, and making sure that they become constructive to achieve to that goal is always considered to be a positive conflict. There is a conflict here. Two different people have different ideas altogether. But when it is a common goal to be achieved, understand this, when there is a common goal to be achieved, some of the ideas which person A and person B will have will be in sync to achieve to that goal. Ideas may be different, but to achieve to that goal, because it's a common goal to be achieved, their ideas will match. And that is when that conflict becomes constructive or functional. It's a positive approach towards achieving that goal. Increases information and ideas. I have shared my ideas, person A has shared his ideas to achieve a common goal. Exactly the example that I just cited out. Now, what happens is, I went out all the thoughts, all the ideas that I may have to make sure that the goal A or the goal X is achieved. Similarly, on similar lines, the other person whom I'm working with also shares all his ideas and thoughts to make sure that the goal X is achieved. There are a lot of things which I may not know or be aware of that the person A has shared. Similarly, person A also is not aware of the fact of what are the ideas and thoughts that I have shared. So when we put it on a table, when we put it on a pen and paper, what comes forward is 10 ideas kept forward by person A and 10 ideas kept by person B, which is me. 20 different ideas, right? I come to know what are the 10 different ideas put forward in front of me by person A, and person A gets to know 10 different ideas put forward in front by me. In that case, what happens is it improves communication and ideas. The 10 different ideas which the person A was not having, I get to know about that aspect. That increases my knowledge. That increases my vulnerability of making sure that I accept those ideas as well, because we are common, we are having a common platform, we are sharing a common goal to achieve. And that is when it becomes functional. Because ideas shared by that person also gets in sync with the goal that we all have to achieve together. Encouraging innovative thinking. When you work as a team and when there's a task which is given to you, there is an assignment which is being assigned to you, what do you normally do? The very first thing that you think of doing is to form a team. Make sure that everybody is on the same page to understand of what has to be achieved. What is the timeline? What are the different ways of achieving it? And finally, by when? Right? You have set targets, timelines, team, the execution methodology, and few others. It's a project, right? That you all have to execute it. In this way, what happens is, when you work as a team, there are different team members coming up with different ideas, different thoughts, and with different forms of experiences that they carry. And when everybody shares their forms of experience and ideas, thoughts, one gets to know about the rest of the other members. They get to understand of what others have to put in front of the table for betterment and the completion of that project. In such case, it's always an encouragement towards innovative thinking. I know that there is going to be a tough competition between the team members as well, because if there are 5 members, except for me, there are 4 different members who are equally capable of executing the project. Not single-handedly, but as a team. But our team, which comprises of 4 to 5 members that I just said, is reporting to a team manager or a team leader. That team leader is closely monitoring each one of our activities and the assignments that we carry out. In such a case, where we have to learn, we have to understand and believe that the other person also has common interest towards achieving that goal, gives us a sense of learning and gaining knowledge through the way of innovative thinking. We become so very conscious about the level of competition that we get involved in amongst our team members itself, gives us that exposure to have more of thoughts, more of ideas to come out, to push ourselves to make sure that we come up with more innovative ideas to make the particular project successful. And finally, it is reduction of stagnation. Reducing stagnation. In this kind of a scenario where there is reduction of stagnation, what do we mean by saying this? Ideas are kept from point A to point B. There are different ideas which are already kept by different people. If we try to understand about stagnation, is that repetition of different ideas. Person A has given 5 thoughts to achieve to the goal. Person B has given 5 thoughts. person C has given another 5 thoughts in such a way, whichever goals are being commonly placed are being kept aside. Whichever goals are discommon or uncommon, I would say, from different individuals are being accepted because they are independent ideas. Common ideas anyways are common ideas which are part of the team, which anyways will be executed. But the ideas which are kept differently are the ones which reduces stagnation. And that is why these all are kept under functional conflicts, because ideas may be different, thoughts may be different, but everybody is getting to learn and grow something out of the conflicts which are arising in a positive way. Now we talk about dysfunctional conflicts. It actually blocks the growth of the organization. The company wants to have a turnover of over some few $1 million in the next financial year. But at the same time, within the organization, there's a lack of mutual trust, there's a lack of understanding, there's a lack of cooperation, and there's a huge attrition rate. In such a scenario, do you think that an organization will be able to achieve that kind of a revenue or turnover in the next financial year that it has already set? If these are certain level of problems, these are certain level of issues which are arising in an organization, the conflicts that arises out of it will never ever help the organization to grow or make sure that that kind of turnover is being met, which they have thought of. Hence, those conflicts are considered to be dysfunctional. It actually blocks the thought, the growth, and the different plans that it sets out within the organization. What happens here in such kind of conflicts? It increases anxiety and stress. There's a lot of pressure. When you start losing people, when there's a lot of attrition rate in the organization, when people do not trust each other, when the revenues are not getting generated, when the turnovers are not getting met quarter on quarter, what happens? People starts getting frustrated. The management starts getting scared about not being able to meet those targets, annual targets. And in such a case, there's a lot of anxiety being created. There's a lot of stress that gets built up within the team. There's a lot of pressure, workload pressure, which actually makes employees' life even more tougher to live. It reduces trust in team members. Common. If you have dysfunctional conflicts, there will be a level of mistrust among the team members. Because if the numbers go down, if you are not getting projects, if there are nothing which is being showed up, there is a huge attrition rate in the organization, which means that there is a trust issue as well. Whether we believe it or not, that's something different. But the component of trust can only be built, and that can be shown only when there's a mutual trust among the employees, and that's how people work as a team. The exercise that I just carried out, small demonstration a few minutes ago, was a mere example of this. The team started off joining hands collaboratively to achieve a common goal, a set target. But the moment I gave individual targets to 4 different groups within that team to make sure that all the 4 different groups achieves something very different from the other, the chain breaks. The total mutual understanding, the mutual trust in that team itself starts to get demarcated. Right? Don't you believe that this is a common thing that happens in our organization, in our setup? Knowingly, unknowingly. I'm not really saying that you will be able to witness it. A lot of times we do not see it from our own eyes, but within our surroundings, within our environment, this is something which is commonly felt and commonly being witnessed. Poor decision. One big decision or one poor decision can completely smash up an empire. If there's a conglomerate, if there's a big organization, if there's a big business empire which is running, decisions are extremely important. You take it at a, you can say the management level, you take it as at a team level, or even at the ground level. Every decision matters to ensure that the company grows. One bit of a conflict at any stage can disrupt the other flow. If there is a poor decision taken from the top management, from a top to bottom approach, because normally in every organization that's how it functions. There's always a top to bottom approach of decisions that flow. Management wants that next year we are going to earn a revenue of maybe X billion dollars. We are going to increase our total manpower strength from X to Y. We are also willing to expand into new verticals of business. But do you think that it's just about a management decision? It's the CEO or the managing director who has taken a call, or the chairman has taken a decision. But do you think the entire organization will also have a common belief? They may not like it the way the top guys have already taken a decision on. But that is something which they will have to respect and follow. Whether they like it, whether they admire it, it's after all the acceptance. They will be bound to accept the fact because that decision has actually come from the top management.
Usually the facts come from the bottom. The decision to make after the facts.
Fact does come from the bottom, goes from the bottom up. But then, after all, if there is a person who is sitting at the top and who wants to take a good call decision, come what may, finally, no matter whatever happens, somewhere in the middle, it gets totally eradicated or removed. Because if you see it practically, theoretically, we can talk so much about all this, that the fact, the information, the market research, the market value, everything goes from bottom to top. But by the time it reaches to the management, it's only, you can say probably 0.1 or 0.2% of what the information really is left over. Rest in the middle, everything gets faded off. That's how the practical approach goes by. We do say information sharing, and this is exactly what sir I would like to highlight on. You have a great concept, you have a great idea to share, and you know that at different levels of hierarchy within an organization, you start sharing your ideas. If I'm at a ground level, if I'm at an executive level, what I do is I share it with my team manager. The team manager likes it and goes up to talk to the higher management. The higher management then goes up to talk to probably the vice president or the deputy vice president, whoever it is. And then it goes up and up. But by the time it reaches to the top boss or the top management, the kind of information that was being shared from the executive level is not exactly the same. And there is actually a practical, you can say, exercise or demonstration which normally talks about how communication kind of at different level becomes barriers, the flow of information that goes from the bottom to the top approach that we make. So reducing information sharing, this is one of the key facts which becomes a point of conflict, and that too in a form of a negative conflict, which is dysfunctional. So far, anything that you probably would have not understood or want to ask? Anything about this? Right. I'll come to all the questions if you have any doubts towards the end of the session. I'll talk about conflict management now. We did talk about a lot about conflicts differently. Now what we will talk about is conflict management. How do we manage those conflicts that arise in the organization? Number one, avoid. This is the best solution, one of the best solutions that you can do it. If you think that, or if you believe, if you can perceive that there is level of conflicts that is arising right in front of you, the best thing that you can do is take a moment and step back. Do not get involved into it. If you feel that's not your domain, if you believe that that's not the area in which you want to get involved in, try to avoid it. Sometimes being silent or taking a step back and avoiding the problem is one of the best solutions for conflict management. Nobody actually admires the fact that you do not have good command over the subject, you don't know the context in which the conflict has risen, but you poke your nose into some kind of sharing or probably try to be one of the best advisors, but that will lead to more conflicts. So if you are not a party to that, if you do not have enough knowledge or background of why that conflict has risen, if you're not even a member who is contributing to that conflict, better avoid it. That is one of the best solutions that one can have in order to maintain conflict management. Second one is compete in a healthy manner. There's a specific reason why I've mentioned in brackets in a healthy manner. The moment we start competing with our colleagues, with our subordinates, or with our peers, with our friends, there's always a fight. The difference of opinion becomes very nasty sometimes. We don't get involved into such kind of competition when there's a conflict, be it verbally, but the situation that sometimes gets created right in front of us can make the competition even more difficult for us to come out of it. Healthy competition is always good for the betterment of the team, of the organization, as well as of the individuals. But if you start competing with your team members, like I'll just give you an example, like this is appraisal time around the month of March, April. A lot of KRA KPIs are met, HR consolidates, team HR consolidates your records, gets your feedback from your managers, and then gives you an appraisal. During the entire course of the year, there's an employee who works really hard, slogs day in and day out, and ensures that he works hard and gets things done for his team. On the other hand, there's a guy who is doing smart work, a little bit of pushing hard and making sure, a little bit of sweet buttering to their respect. And this is common. This happens. When appraisal comes, and if the smart guy gets a little more of increment, a little more of promotional benefits as compared to the guy who has actually worked hard, don't you think that this kind of competition will arise? It will not be demonstrated in the way the two of them functions, but there will be thoughts in the minds of the person who has actually worked hard, who has slogged enough, who has given all the honest approach in ensuring that the work that he carries out is done in a way to do justice to the team. That is when the kind of negative thoughts starts coming in the minds of that person who has worked hard for the person who has actually worked smart. It is very common. You will not be able to see it visually. But then, whenever the two functions, whenever two starts doing work, they come to the workstation, they work, you will be able to figure out that yes, there is a sense of ignorance, a sense of negative approach, negative feeling towards the other person. But this is not what we look into kind of conflict management. Competition in a healthy way is always acceptable, because if somebody is rising, as I said, that a person who has worked hard did not get the right incremental recognitions, then he, in that sense, he should see what the person who has actually done, the guy who has actually worked smart, done differently than what he has been doing. Has he worked for all the 8 hours, logged enough, and made sure that things happen? Or something different that he would have done made the management believe that he has done a smart work within the given time, and that's the reason why he deserves it. He deserves the increment, he deserves the right appraisal. So this person should not only be very much focused on what he has done and why he didn't get the increment. Rather, on the other side, he should look into the other side of it to see what differently the things that this person has done to gain the management impression. So competition is also one good way or decent way to ensure that management of conflict gets resolved. Accommodate. What do you mean by accommodate in kind of conflict management? I'll explain you what exactly this means. There's a problem. The problem needs a solution. Otherwise, that still remains unresolved, unanswered, and unfiltered. Two people working on that particular problem says, hey, I can probably end up working till here, and beyond that, this is not my purview. The other person comes in and says, this is just what you have been able to come up with a solution. The problem is even larger, and I expect more from you. In such a scenario, what happens is the other person who has challenged the person who just is able to mention or give a kind of solution to that problem to 40% of the actual problem it is left over with the rest of the 60%, which he expects the other person to get resolved. But what happens here is both of them in such a situation is trying to ensure that they both accommodate. That person B gives about 60% of solution to the problem, and the person A gives about 40% of solution to the problem. Nobody is contributing to entire 100% solution to the problem that has risen, which means that nobody is actually contributing completely. I know that he is there for me. The other person knows that I am there for him. The interdependency on each other makes both the people try to accommodate to find out a solution, but not to the core, not to the complete way of finding out solutions to the problem. So in such a case, conflict management is happening. People are able to find out solutions, but in either case, both the individuals is not contributing 100% to the problem. It's just about some percentage, some factor of the problem that has risen. I know that he is a subject matter expert, he can contribute more. He believes that I have more knowledge over the domain, so I can probably contribute more. And we both end up accommodating to find out a solution. But at the same time, both are not really giving 100% of our valuation. Conflict management is happening, but we are trying to accommodate to this. Collaborate. Collaboration is one strongest and the most powerful tool of conflict management. Here what happens is, a problem arises in a team, there is an escalation, client has come up with some kind of feedback or non-compliance, and the solution has to be given to the client within no time. What happens? The team manager is nervous, at the same time he is being pressurized by the management to find out the solution at the earliest possible. Now what happens is, he calls on a meeting and he asks and requests the team to find out the different solution of why that escalation has come, why that non-compliance has come, and how you can work as a team to make sure that this particular problem is being resolved. All the team members understand the crux of the problem, and what they do is they start working together as a team. There's no way out where at this point of time, at this phase of the problem that has risen, that all the different team members will have different ideas. No way out. Everyone understands of what exactly the problem is, what exactly the client is expecting, and by when. So they know that what has to be achieved and by when. And when this happens, everybody in the team kind of forgets their own personal grudges, their own difficulties and issues which they may have with each other, and they start collaborating together. They keep aside all their personal conflicts, all their differences of opinions or ideas, and they start working together to make sure that the problem in hand has a solution. The problem that has risen out of nowhere gets to have a common feedback to be given to the client with proper response. That is a form of collaboration that the team goes up with and ensures that there is a form of conflict resolution, conflict management that happens. And due to which this particular aspect, which is collaboration, is considered to be one of the best ways of conflict management, where you do not indulge into personal differences, where you do not indulge into some kind of opinions, where you don't even discuss your personal issues. It's a common problem, you know the timelines, you know the challenges, and by when it has to be achieved. And that's when you join hands, you form a team. Now, the same demonstration which was shown here, if I reverse it, there are 4 different teams having 4 different, you can say, promotional aspects to look into it. But then I say, listen, if you work as a team and if you achieve this target within so and so time, everybody gets recognized by the managing director in the town hall meeting. Now, what happens in that moment, if I do a reverse approach, everybody forgets their personal benefits that they get. Everybody starts getting to understand that each one in that circle will be recognized by the managing director in the town hall meeting. So now what happens? Everybody knows that we all on the same page, because there is one common problem and one solution has to be provided. People forgetting about their personal grudges, personal conflicts, personal opinions, and they start working together. They collaborate. And when they collaborate, conflicts gets resolved. That's when conflict management, part of collaboration, also helps a lot. Compromise. Compromises is also a form of domination, where when there are team members, 2 or more team members, one of the team members has a great knowledge over the subject, has a great command over the particular problem, and he knows that how it gets resolved. He gives an approach, he sets out the expectation, and he says, okay, this is probably would be worked around in this manner. The other 2 team members or the other team members probably may have ideas, they may have thoughts, but because of the fact that the person who is senior to him within the team has already made a statement, has already made a judgment out of how the problem is to be resolved, they don't even make any kind of judgments. They do not even make statements of how they want or they can contribute to the problem resolvement. What are the other team members doing is compromising with that solution. The other person who has actually made a statement is in a dominating position. Compromising does help the conflicts to get resolved, because the solution which comes out of the problems is goes on a fast track basis, because nobody commands, nobody really challenges the individual. I compromise, my colleague compromised with Mr. X, who has already made the judgment, but that's a temporary one. Compromise does help to bridge in conflict management on a fast track basis. It does help to get the things done or carried out on a much more faster basis. But in this particular mode, the problem is that the rest of the team members who couldn't speak up, the rest of the team members who couldn't share their version or their ideas to help the team get out of the problem in different ways or find out even more robust solutions, they keep those ideas within themselves. They think that probably they are not better than the person who has already made the statement or made the judgment. So there's always a component of thought that they feel left out or ignored. And that is the reason why compromising for a solution to be provided is temporary, is not a permanent solution. Conflict get resolved, it becomes a part of conflict management and helps individuals to find out more faster solutions. But from the behavioral aspect of it, there's always a challenge which still remains. And that kind of helps in the longer run to create problems. Temporary, yes, problem gets resolved, solutions are provided, the response made is easily acceptable by the clients as well. But in the longer run, there's always a component of grudge and individuals being left over, not being able to highlight their own issues in front of the management or in front of the team members. They feel left over, and that is the reason they have that kind of internal grudge within themselves that they keep bridging in and in and in until there is a point where they went out. And that venting out of the grudges at any point of time later can create even more problems. Time being, yes, but for the longer run, it's a certain no. So out of all the conflict management points that has just been highlighted here, the best possible way is collaboration. The second most important way of having conflict management in place is avoidance. The third is compromise, fourth is to accommodate, and fifth is to compete. This is the normal order that we follow in terms of making sure and ensuring that conflict management is being duly taken care of. Now, what is the facilitation that we have to take care? Find out the root cause of the conflict. Any conflicts that you may have had in your team, Yukran, if I may ask you, any example that you want to cite in your
Usually clash of egos. I think so. Everybody in our team, sometimes when you're brainstorming ideas, you always think that you have the best idea. So I think so. How to make sure that you leave your ego out the window or out the door when you come into the office, because at the end of the day, when you're working with really smart people, I think so we are working in an IT company, so most of them are engineers, really smart people, problem solvers. So what is the best scenario to let your ego down and listen to the other person? I think that's where a lot of things are lost when you think that you are better than them. I think that is where people think, if I'm better than them, why I'm listening to them. So ego plays a big role, I think, in conflict. So that's yeah.
so most important thing, finding the root cause of the conflict, one of them being ego. Any other points which members sitting here would like to share? Sir, if I ask you, any root cause of any conflicts?
Human being are, is it okay? Yeah, okay. Human being are by nature are competitive nature. They are loner. And okay, Indian context, people they don't train to work with a team. They like to work individually as a competition. And so this is a culture for and as a result of the fact that, you know, if you look at the level, I want to have a better house than my neighbors. I want to have a better car than my neighbors. I want to have a better jewelry than the neighbor. So this is by born, by birth, you have been trained to do that. When you bring to the office here, in public, we also try to not to work as a team, you have to work as a individual as well. And it manifests itself when you hire people. We hire people because of the fact that we hire people who want to be the best in the team. I always want to hire people who will be easier. I don't want to hire people who are smarter. So I can dominate them. So given that there is a conflict comes in when there are two strong people come in and they don't know how to work together. They don't care for the company interest, they don't care for the team interest, they only work for their own interest. It's a very big challenge how to bring the culture in the company. That's how my judgment is that. If you do that, then people succeed. And people who don't do that, they'll fail.
Thank you so much, sir. Well, one of them you tried to point out is ego, and sir just mentioned personal interest and for the kind of culture that you are part of. Also, kind of makes a lot of conflict come into picture. Anybody else? Yes.
I think the perception we are having about individual in our head, like even if we are working in a team, if I don't like you, or if I'm having a certain kind of perception in my head, then any which case we will be having a disagreement in our opinion, and that will lead to a conflict, and that will be no major conflict.
It's all about behavioral perceptions. Behavioral.
Mindset, I would say rigid mindset, inflexibility in behavior and aptitude to understand other person's perception.
Kind of being very adamant in terms of the approach that you
That
take.
I am right and I'm the only one who's right.
Yes. Anybody else? Or what could be the reports?
Yeah. Personal experience, sometimes like you are working in a team and then suddenly you realize that like suddenly you realize that somehow someone else is working better, performing than you. So that is also comes in, that's in the conflict.
So everybody were right. I think the way we look into conflicts is human behavior, perception, ego, and domination, the kind of environment or the atmosphere that we belong from is something that creates conflicts within us. Yes, sir.
One of the thing I think which nobody mentioned was the knowledge, which is if you're ground up rather than just right at the top, that makes a little bit of conflict.
Yes, yes. Knowledge is also one of the key elements, in addition to whatever the team members of your audience said, that creates a bigger conflict in nature, because if you do not have enough knowledge, you do not have enough pick up on the subject that you are talking about, or you would express yourself, it creates a kind of sense of inside conflict in nature that is created. But I'll just ask one very common question. I mean, it's a very corporate setup, but anybody who are married out here? This is very people like all right. Okay. Now I'll ask you. Okay. With respect to context. Now when you go home, your view, suppose for example it's a Sunday. And there's a new movie which is launched and you wish to go out and watch the movie, but at the same time your spouse feels that probably it's resting time because he had a hard day week from Monday to Saturday working in office. He doesn't want to work. How do you cater to that conflict which arises from this thought of yours? Because this is also a form of conflict. Where you want to go out for a movie, from the other side, you don't have enough support to help you to go to that what movie along with your family. So how do you cater to that?
Simple, I go alone.
Which actually resonates to avoiding in the previous slide that we just had observed, it's about avoiding. If there's a conflict that arising in such a kind of situation, just avoid it and probably go alone because that's my personal choice. Right?
Plus 25 years of marriage, always these kind of conflicts happen. So we are used to it and we manage to find our own ways to gather that, no problem.
So there's one more point, compromising. You are compromising with the situation, knowing the fact that you're already 25 years into marriage, and that's where. So these things, why did I relate this question on a personal note and what I was talking about the last half an hour or so? That conflict is such a definition, it's such a word which knowingly, unknowingly is so very cringe to us in our day-to-day lives that we do not realize that these come and go, these things, this word, definition of a conflict comes and goes from our lives, from in front of us, but we never are able to, sometimes able to catch hold of it and realize that there are conflicts, but that time when we are able to figure that out, it is on a rise. It has risen to a level or it has been escalated to a level where it needs a kind of resolution. That's when we get to realize that conflicts have risen high. Otherwise, we deal with conflicts like bread and butter each day. There's some form of conflict which comes into the picture. Even in my life, it happens. Even with you guys, it happens. Everyone, it happens. This is something which we'll have to live with. But in terms of facilitation for conflict management, we have to find out a root cause of why conflict does happen. Until we really get to understand, this will be a recurring thing. It will continue to happen until we figure out that what makes that conflict to happen. It's always a joke which has been created between a husband and wife that if there's some kind of conflicts, if wife is probably screaming on the husband, is trying to demand something, silence is the key. And I normally prefer to do that. The best solution in my years of marriage that I have been, the best way that I deal with conflicts is to just be silent. How long would my wife scream on me? That's the best way. So the rule
How long you
find
are married?
sorry,
How long you are married?
9 years. Finding the root cause of the conflict is a key to really resolve that conflict in a much better and robust way. Allow all the participants to express their views. Remember that until unless you make sure that you are able to express yourself, you are able to allow the other person to share of what he or she thinks about that particular aspect, that particular point, you're not able to resolve that. You have to hear the other person out. Yes, a lot of times, as I said, that silence is the key, or avoiding that solution is the key, but that may happen once, twice, thrice. Not all the time when the conflict is getting recurred every single time. The same kind of problem, the same kind of issue are coming up. It needs a solution. It needs a way of answering or response in which you need to hear the other person out to make sure that you are able to identify the root cause. That is, do not allow emotion to consume the parties involved. Do not get emotionally attached to what the other person is saying. You know that there's a business which is getting downsized. There's a negative, you can say, the company has not been able to earn much, has been not been able to generate revenue for the last quarter or last fiscal year. And so happening in the appraisal cycle, management says, oh, we have made huge losses. And hence, there won't be much of increments this year. We won't be able to do much because there was no business, COVID has struck, and all throughout our businesses. Hence, the only thing that we can do is sustainability. We can sustain the employees in our organization, but having said that, we cannot give you any insurance. What do? You get emotionally impacted. Sometimes, yes, because you know that if you do not accept this, where would you go there? If you find you're able to find a better job, you move out because you need it. You need a solution out of your issues which you and your family is facing. Everybody needs to have a better living, but you do not get emotionally impacted by this kind of problem that is arising. At the same time, keep a respectful, empathetic, and caring attitude towards the person whom you're talking to. Whenever there is a verbal conflict, whenever there is a tug of war through verbal statements made between two individuals or in a group of people, you as a person will have to be empathetic and share a common attitude, a very kind of caring attitude towards the person you're talking. You cannot be rude. you cannot be impolite. You have to listen to the person, the version of them, of what they want to convey. And that is only when you reciprocate, you are able to reciprocate the same. If you do not hear the other person that right, do you expect that the other person will also do the same with you? Not really. You have to be empathetic, you have to show a caring attitude towards different people, to listen to them carefully, and that's when they are able to hear your version. It's a form of how conflict management is being facilitated. Stay away from blames and accusations. We all need to stay away from all the kinds of accusations that one makes. I may not be productive, I may not be a good, strong, and powerful employee in my organization, all well said and done. But I know who I am. I know what I'm contributing to the growth of the organization. And I really do not care of what other people are talking negative about it. The better you understand this, that staying away from blames and acquisitions will actually help you to stick to your task, to stick to your focus of what you're doing, the more acceptable you will be in the organization and the more productive outcomes that you can give to the growth of the organization. If somebody comes up and tells you, hey, you have not been able to meet the targets, you are not being very productive, you are just wasting your time in the organization, stay away from that. Listen, yes, you cannot avoid that, but do not accept it within yourself. Have the strong belief in you that you are someone who is actually contributing to the growth of the organization. Be honest, be vulnerable, be very straightforward, and at the same time, make sure that you are not impacted by the negative forces that can impact your growth and that can impact your sustainability in the setup. This is very important for all of us to understand. The better it is that we accept this and move forward. The moment we start getting to get adapted and start accepting accusations and all such kind of blames from other individuals, it starts impacting our productivity, it starts impacting our work and also our thought process. You will be able to figure out all these kind of challenges in your day-to-day lives, but do not get impacted at all. Encourages all parties to listen. Do not interrupt when anybody is trying to share something. Listen to that person in and out, and then try to give your judgment, try to give your opinion or your view. If somebody is speaking up, do not interrupt in between. The moment you do so, you are disrespecting the other person, not letting that other person to speak up and share a point that he wants to make. We humans have a very common tendency that the moment somebody is speaking up, we start building our own thoughts on the statement that the person is making. And the moment we see that at one point it's not matching or it's not in line with the other person what's saying, we interrupt. That is what we need to avoid. We need to listen to that other person. We need to respect their space and make sure that we understand what the person feels about that particular situation or that particular conflict that has. Let them speak up, let them complete, and then you give your opinion. Opinion is something that you need to give. Feedback is something that you need to give, not your judgment. Because you have a different way of approaching things, the other person will have a different way. It's not about your judgment, it's just about your opinion, it's about your belief, it's about your feedback. So encourage all the parties to listen. Identify areas of disagreement and identify areas of agreement. You need to have clear demarcation between what you agree to and what you don't agree to. It's a common thing that happens with all of us. That where there will be a conflict only when there are areas of agreement and there are areas of disagreement. In the previous slide, we talked about functional conflicts and we talked about dysfunctional conflicts. And that is when the positive and the negative sides of conflicts came into picture. So we need to also be in a position to identify what are the positive sides of conflict in nature and what are the negative sides of conflict in nature. And this identification will help us create a demarcation between what will help us to grow further and what will actually help us not to move further and just keep them aside. Search for solutions. Search for solutions. Two people are sitting together and both are clueless. They do not know ideally what needs to be taken out of the problem, what solution has to be given, and hence what happens here is that if you do not have a solution, both of the people are clueless. They're sitting on a table discussing on matters without no outcome. Both individuals are sitting together talking about the problems without no solution, no outcome. The conflict still remains. Guys. This is when even if you do not have enough material or enough thoughts to come up with solutions or ideas for taking off the record of the conflict that has arisen, make sure that you keep the floor open for others to contribute. It is just not about two people handling a proper problem. If you feel that both of the individuals are slightly incompetent to come up with a solution, involve others. Try to make sure that there are people in and around you who can identify, who can probably gauge what the problem is. Try to listen to you and then give up some kind of neutral feedback. Collect those ideas, think about it, do a little bit of brainstorming, and then find out solutions. Search for solutions is exactly tied to what I just said. And reach a consensus. This is the most important thing for conflict management. Both the parties need to agree to each other's decisions that they have taken or points that they have made. Because until unless you do so, until unless you have a consensus between the two parties, the decisions cannot be made. Right? Conflict will be there. So I have a point to make, I make a point. Now, if you all do not agree to what I have said, there's a conflict. If you all say something on what I have just presented, I do also have to agree to it. Yes, that you have made some point, which means you have understood the matter, and based on that, you have made an analysis. If I make a judgment on that, no, you all are wrong. This is what I have said is correct. This still remains as a conflict. There is no consensus. To have a conflict resolution, to have proper conflict management, you need to have a proper agreement between the parties. It could be small or big. It could be something which still remains unanswered or unresolved. But for the benefit of a problem to be resolved, or for the purpose of the issue at large to be addressed, you need a proper agreement. And even a verbal agreement, not necessarily it has to be a written agreement at force, but even if it's a verbal agreement, it does play a major role in finding out solutions in the future. Okay. So that is what about now key takeaways out of the conflict management workshop seminar. Now adapting to workplace situations as needed. I'll keep this floor open for members sitting out here to help me understand of what you have understood from conflict management of the three. I anyways be talking about all the 3 points, but still I would want you all to contribute in terms of what you had a takeaway from conflict management on the different parameters. When I talk about adapting to workplace situations as needed, what is your basic understanding?
Be not static, be dynamic.
Be not static, be dynamic. Perfect. Anybody else?
Work under your means, see what is there, and try to give the outcome as optimum with the resources you have.
Okay.
Do not be rigid with your decision.
Do not be rigid with your decision. Do not be so very particular about whatever decision that you have made is true and has to be accepted. That's perfect. Anybody else?
Focus to the target, the goal that has to be reached, whether the conflict has to be resolved via different processes or without overlooking it or by compromising or collaboration, whichever way you adopt it, the ultimate reason has to be reached to the goal. Target that.
Now, when you talk about, ma'am, you talk about goal to be achieved. Yes, that is there. But do you not think that a party or a couple of parties who are working towards achieving that goal has to be in sync to the different types of conflict? One cannot think from the perspective of adapting it, one cannot think of from the perspective of compromising against it. So anything has to work out, it has to work out synchronized. Okay? But yes, focusing on the goal, that is one way of getting adapted to workplace situations. Anyone else?
Be like a fluid so that you can just adjust it in any of the utensils according to the situation.
Great definition. What's your name, Gurneet? Swapnil, fantastic. So be very dynamic and open to change management also. Yeah. Anyone else? Well, everyone was right on their part that they explained, which kind of makes me feel even better because you have actually understood of what change management, conflict management talks about. It's about adapting to workplace situations. So whatever situation does arise due to different conflicts at workplace, you should be able to adapt to those conflicts. You should be able to make sure that you mold yourself in a way which kind of addresses to those conflicts in a much more robust way, in a way where you can find solution to it. In whichever behavior that you be part of, that is one thing. But at the end of the day, accepting that there is a conflict, finding out solutions and coming up with robust ways of addressing and countermeasures is way of adapting to workplace situations. Now, when we talk about foster creativity in conflict resolution, what do we understand by this?
Listen to everyone.
Listen to everyone, okay?
Be out of the box.
Out of the box. Think something different.
Every individual has a different perception of thinking. So always let others speak so that because everyone sees the world from a different angle.
People having different perceptions, different opinions, different beliefs. Yes. Anyone else?
Get a mixture of everything and create a hybrid solution.
Finding out hybrid solutions. Yes, that's also correct. So if you would have seen that in some of the previous slides, we also referred to some of the areas where there's a conflict that arises out of nowhere. There's a solution that needs to be provided, and there are some individuals forming a team where ideas are shared between team, one member of the team, the second member of the team, third member of the team. Every individual will have different ways of expressing or finding out solution to that problem. So if I'm one of the team members, I have 10 different ideas to find out solution to the problem. My ideas may not be exactly the same with my counter team member. He may have different opinions, different beliefs, different ways of finding out solution to the common problem that has arisen. Now gathering all the problems that we all have together and bringing it under one particular sheet with pen and paper, we find a lot of ways where probably from my perspective, I have not thought of what others have thought of. Those members in the team would have also not thought of what I have already mentioned. So in a way, what is happening is we are trying to have more creativity to come up with solutions for a common problem where I may have 10 ways of finding solutions, but then towards the end, when we are working as a team, we come up with more than 10 solutions. There are 4 team members coming up with 40 different ideas. So 40 different ways of finding solutions. It's a way of fostering creativity. New innovative ideas are coming forward. The generation that we are all part of in form of conflicts that arise, and this one thing kind of helps a lot in individuals to come up with better ideas, think out of the box, rightly said. be impromptu in coming up with solutions. That will help us to become effective leaders tomorrow and take up more responsibility. And finally, encouragement for employees to think creatively to enhance leadership. Do you agree to this point? That in case if you are contributing towards the growth of an organization, finding out different solutions to conflict that has risen at workplace or even beyond that, even out of it. Encouragement to different employees to find out solutions to those problems, to those conflicts that arises, helps them find out creativity and also to enhance leadership. You believe it?
Yeah.
Can I see a prayer of hands? How many of you think that this particular point is quite important for all of us? Perfect. So in a way, what are the key takeaways that we have out of the conflict management session? Is not that I was here to share something very new. Everyone in this room or everyone on the Zoom setup already were aware of what conflict management was. Okay. They all were aware of what conflict management was. But most importantly, we didn't ever realize that these conflicts kind of touch us and go at every point of our lives. Professionally, personally. All we need to do is identify and figure out, are these conflicts impactful? Are these conflicts influencing our well-being? Are these conflicts impacting us in our growth and sustainability? These questions are answered in the way of the type of conflict that arises and how well we address to that. Conflicts are resolved. Conflict management, as we talk about, is to manage the conflict in a more effective way. And if you are being effective enough to manage the conflicts, you are actually proving yourself to be a great leader and a communicator. So this is how I have thought of just keeping a small photo which demonstrates all that if you are able to help yourself deal and handle conflicts in a much effective way, you are able to prove yourself to be a more effective communicator and an effective leader. Tomorrow, you just do not restrict yourself to only be in one workstation, work from 8 to 5 or 9 to 6 hour job, and then go back, relax, and then come back the next day. The management, the team, the organization demands more out of you. And it's not just about being productive, but it also demands of you being more efficient, more collaborative, and being able to take up more decision calculations coming forward. So whenever there is a conflict, there are issues at hand, you are able to handle those effectively without much intervention by the management. Okay. I think that brings to the end of my session, my workshop here at Interra IT, Interra IT, not Toastmaster, but Interra IT. And I thank the entire fraternity of the management of Interra IT for giving me this wonderful opportunity to come here and share my views. If there are any questions that you want to ask or you want to share something out of the session, I'd be more than happy to address it. Anyone?
Thank you, Abhishek, for such a lovely session. Abhijit, for such a lovely session. Now I request Mr. Ashok sir to kindly grace the stage and say a few words for closing the ceremony. And then maybe we can proceed for the fifth presentation. Sir, please come to the stage for a few words. A huge round of applause for Mr. Ashok, everybody. Thank you, guys.
Abhijit, thanks very much for wonderful presentation. No, I'm sorry I missed a part of it, little part of it at the beginning, but that's okay. I think it's a fun interesting to listen to. Okay, and you hear all the stories, all the theories and everything else, but you have to, are you going to internalize it and practice day to day? That's the key factor comes in, because conflict is every day. In fact, conflict is healthy. Conflict is good. Because if you are not conflict, then you are doormat. If you are doormat, you are just lying on the floor, you have no ambition, nothing else, you got a collar taker, if that's the life you are going to select. Then you go to the club, your boss will say, yes, and you say, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, whatever you say is right. Okay, then it's okay. But if you God gave you brain, go use the brain, and if you want to be somebody, and that's what you got to hire for. If you want to ambition, you want to hire somebody, you want to have your own, then you will conflict. Conflict is a part of life. Because you want to, you said you're moving up. Moving up, I always talk with a USA girl that, and I give them lecture to her every day. That you can move up, you can move up only because if somebody didn't get a job, you got the job. Right? That's a very simple thing, right? There are people who around, you got the job. Then you have to be proven better than other people, right? Unless a democracy, everybody gets some salaries and everything else, that never happened. So somebody gets promoted, somebody will not get promoted. There is conflict there, internal conflict comes in. But conflict is healthy. And everybody is there, conflict there. The cricket in cricket team, there are 11 positions there. People are fighting each other. On the other hand, they are working together as a team, right? Because their only goal is to win for the team, country. So these are we don't understand that. We think that we don't think of the team as the important thing, we only think of ourselves. We have to think that way. That if we think that way, that is healthy, completely healthy, then we move on. Then we get good. Then you learn there is lots of skills there. Everything cannot be my way or highway. That's what people think that I'm always right. I'm always right, you are wrong, you are wrong, you are idiot, I'm always right? So you have to think that way, So anyway, that's a good thing. I think Abhijit has done something to take. Only thing that we decide, all of us to decide, right? To how to internalize it, how to adopt it in my life, right? How to make it better, and everything else, right? Obviously, it's a 9 years marriage, and after the marriage will last for another 20 years. That's the equities. He had equity always right, he's wife is always right. He's always wrong. I did such a thing. I'm married for 50 years. So anyhow, so thanks very much. Thank you.
Yes, sir, I would like Abhijit to come on stage so that folks could facilitate Abhijit for such a lovely session. Abhijit, please come on stage for facilitation. Huge round of applause for Abhijit, everybody. Sir, thank you everyone for such an amazing audience. We have a tea break outside, so I would like you to join us outside for a tea break so that we can all talk